Excuse me, Mr. DJ.
Hey, check this out. We got a great show coming your way.
From the ECSI Sports Studios, it's the Midday Market Report with Jeff Dawson.
Good morning, sports fans from all around the globe. I'm your host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and this is your morning breakfast bankroll / early midday market report for Tuesday, December 6, 2022, our weekly trip over the Sagamore Bridge, down Route 3, over to 93, to meet up with our good friend and colleague, Mr. Julian Edlow of DraftKings, as we talk locals, the Final Four, NBA, Pats, Celtics. We won't talk about the Bruins. They finally lost one at the Garden to their old coach, Mr. Cassidy, and the Vegas Knights, which has got a little hurt, just a little more. But without further ado, let's bring him in, the one and only Mr. Julian Edlow.
How we doing, Jeff?
Good morning, sir. How are we?
Hanging in there. Always busy. You know the drill.
A lot to try to get into today, not just the locals. I'm going to start with the Final Four in college football. You and I have been doing shows since July, August. You know, we saw each other in July when I put together that circuit ticket. Overall thoughts, it came down to a decision, basically a 2-loss Alabama team, which they didn't get style points for the losses, versus an Ohio State team that we talked about all year. Last game of the season, pretty beat up at home as 9-point favorites to Michigan, but they're in. So give us your thoughts. Basically, I assume you were thinking the same thing. Once USC lost, that was the way it's going to be. But thoughts on what happened on Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, that, like we said last week, we said if USC lost, who would I make the case for? I would make the case for an Alabama team that lost on a walk-off field goal at Tennessee and an overtime 2-point conversion at LSU. Those are just about as good of losses as you can have. But the problem is they lost 2 of them. You got to lose 1 coin flip game. It can't be 2. And it happened twice. Now they won the coin flip game at Texas, so you can make the argument Alabama could have been a 3-loss team instead of a 1-loss team, and that's why you give it to a 1-loss Ohio State. Everybody knows Alabama neutral field would be favored over a TCU, but that's not how this works. It's resume, and you got to get those 1-loss teams in, and that was kind of expected. It's a little bit of a letdown college football playoff in general. I think it's been a wild season, but I don't have that high hopes. I guess Ohio State is good. Everybody's kind of down on them after the Michigan loss. Ohio State can hang with Georgia, so that could be the best game we get. We'll see. But yeah, it's like, even last year, even with the 2 blowouts we knew we were going to get the rematch of Alabama Georgia in the national championship game, and that lived up to the hype. I'm hoping I'll be proved wrong. I just don't have high expectations for this playoffs, so we'll probably get some fantastic games.
And as you try to break those games down, a couple things really stood out to me. I was trying to, before the lines came out, I'm trying to say, okay, do they want Georgia money? Do they want Ohio State money? Well, in my eyes, obviously they wanted Georgia money. The line opened at 6.5, 6, and I'm hearing all the sharps are running to the window and pounding Ohio State. So that's number one. Number two, I thought the Michigan number was kind of spot on, 9.5. Well, all of a sudden, all the shops are running to TCU here. And so Michigan was there last year. Hats off to Harbaugh, Team Khaki. They got them back there. The team looks dominant. This TCU team, no one gives any respects. They fought their butt off. Again, overtime against K-State on Saturday.
That was I was on K-State on Saturday as my biggest play, and that 11-point lead disappears in the fourth quarter, and you're like, oh my God, TCU is going to do it again.
surprised at either number. Opening number where they sit right now. I know we have a few weeks to dissect these, but were you surprised?
Not really. I knew that the Ohio State Georgia game, it was going to tell us everything if it was 6.5 or 7.5, kind of like you said. Like, okay, so who do they want you to bet on? If it's 7.5, they want you to bet on Ohio State because you're getting that key number. If it's 6.5, they want you to bet on they want you to bet on Georgia, and it does look like they're encouraging the Georgia money and they want Ohio State. Now, is Ohio State going to win the game? I don't know. The perception on Ohio State intrigues me just because a couple of weeks ago they were 11-0 and like double-digit home favorites over Michigan, and they were going to be 13-0 going into this thing and maybe looked at as almost an equal of Georgia. And now they're not. So I totally get the sharp angle on Ohio State. The problem is what we saw in that Michigan loss is them just get pounded like physically and lose that game to a more physical Michigan team. What type of team is Georgia? Georgia's the type of team that is going to just ground and pound you, be physical on defense, and maybe this flashy Ohio State team isn't going to do as well. Now, it's not outdoors. I guess it's not, a cold outdoor game, Big Ten type of game. It's indoors. But where is it indoors? It's in Atlanta, where Georgia just smoked LSU in the SEC game. It's like a home game. I have a really tough time. I'm not going to lay the points with Georgia. I have a tough time seeing Georgia not get there. And then a good game against a physical Michigan team that kind of is an intriguing matchup. I kind of like the Georgia minus 125 to win it all. I've been thinking about putting that out as a play and just writing it up and skipping betting on the Ohio State game with the points, just pulling for Georgia. And then if they come through, you got that minus 125 money line, which you're going to get nothing close to for that national title game. And you already got a really good number, a really good bet in. So that's kind of what I'm leaning towards. I did grab a little bit of TCU plus 10 just because I saw a plus 10, and how can you not do that? That game's interesting. I think TCU is going to do pretty well in that game, honestly.
And I'm glad you said that, because I'm looking back initially at those numbers, and I saw initially a Georgia minus 120. I saw a Michigan plus 280. I saw an Ohio State plus 400, TCU plus 1,000 or whatever the number was, 12, 1,300.
TCU's 1,600 right now on DraftKings.
Okay. So the initial thought process is Georgia versus Michigan. And so technically, if you think Michigan's going to win, you could grab the plus 280 or whatever you get at Michigan.
If you think Michigan's going to win, you got plus 290 right now on DK Sportsbook, and then you got that ticket in hand. And if Ohio State does upset Georgia, now you're looking at, I think DK has the look ahead for every possible
-3
championship game. So let me see. We got to scroll through all these wild bowl games. I think it was 3. Yeah, Ohio State's -3 over Michigan. So you would have Michigan plus 290 in that matchup. There's some intrigue there as well.
And I was going to flip it to the next one, because it just, the number that smells the worst to me there is Ohio State plus 400, meaning I think they're really giving them a huge puncher's chance here.
Yeah, I mean, it's Ohio State. Like when we started the year, I thought that Ohio State was one of the 3 teams with Alabama and Georgia that had the most realistic shot to win it all. And I mean, Ohio State still, after what we saw in that game, is a 3-point favorite over Michigan on a neutral. That's the number on DraftKings, at least. So what it's telling you, it's really just because they get Georgia, right? Ohio State's at a longer number than Michigan, but would be favored over Michigan. So, like, if you think Ohio State's going to win that game, you might as well bet them to win it all, because then you're going to have them as either a 3-point favorite over Michigan or what was it against TCU? And Ohio State minus 10.5 against TCU. So, like, now you're looking at a minus 400 team in that game that you have at plus 400. So I get it. If you like Ohio State, if you're betting Ohio State like plus the points, you might as well just sprinkle a little bit on the money line and sprinkle a little bit on them to win it all. Because if they show up against Georgia, then what's the perception going to be? Those numbers are going to be. That's why I don't think you can lay like the -3 Ohio State, or I think you should. If you think the matchup would be Ohio State, Michigan, you should lay the -3 now against Michigan, because what is the perception of Ohio State going to be if they beat Georgia? Now they're going to be back to the same like touchdown favorite over Michigan that they were a few weeks ago. So I'm not betting on Ohio State, but if you are, I think you kind of need to, play that chess game and think a couple moves ahead and where these numbers are going to go. Because if Georgia is in that game, if Ohio State is in that game, that means they beat Georgia. And that means we're all going to go from saying they stink from the Michigan loss to saying, oh, wow, this is the best team after one game.
Love the thought process there. And something we talked about in August still was a cash cow. We talked about it last week. The red flag, where their team total, Ohio State, was only 32, about 6 points lower than it was all year. The lowest I thought it was opening day against Notre Dame. Basic math here, I think we got about a 60.5 total, on that game. Julian, basic math, 26.5, 27, that Ohio State team total. You going back to the well there, or are you saying not so fast?
I don't take team total overs against Georgia. I don't think I'm gonna do it. Especially since I got that Georgia to win it all ticket in. I think, I'll look at the props when they come out. And I don't know. I mean, we just look at how high scoring that SEC championship game was, but it also kind of didn't matter, and you could just let that game spiral out of control. This matters more. So I have a tough time playing the total or a side, really. Like if it was 7.5, I would take some Ohio State, maybe protect myself, look for a little middle with the Georgia ticket. But I have a tough time with both of these college football playoff games, really. So I'm going to be rooting for Georgia in that game, and then hopefully have that alive in the national title game and just have a really good number on them. But yeah, we got until New Year's Eve to figure this out. So I'm sure we'll come up with plenty of angles when you have a month to talk about these games. Especially, I don't know how early DK is going to get up the player props. Those could move a ton. There could be a lot of value early. There could be guys, you see this transfer portal, there could be guys that are on the board that then opt out or transfer or something, and that just skews everything in the player prop market. There's still a lot to be written when it comes to what to bet on in these games.
100%. I can't wait to be breaking this down with you.
Have you seen how much these bowl games have moved, and everybody's going into the portal? Teams, we got a Wisconsin Oklahoma State matchup. Neither team has their quarterback. It's crazy. I was going to put out some bowl plays yesterday, but I was like, you put it out and it moves 3 points, and it's just it's crazy. You got to just sit around picking off numbers, and I did that a little bit yesterday, and it's the board. I'm excited for the games, but just keeping up with it is a lot.
And this started a few years ago. I forget the player that was in a big-time bowl game, and he's like, you know what? I'm not going to play. I'm going to get myself ready for the NFL draft. I don't want to get hurt. So now you add the portal with these guys that might be just a little nicked up, where they're going to a lot lesser of a bowl game. And you're like, I'd be intrigued with the Alabama. Okay, they're playing K-State, and even Saban said some stuff, he probably shouldn't have said about K-State.
I some of the K-State plus 6.5.
Exactly.
I'm a Bama guy, but it's just you gotta decide which teams are gonna have motivation, right?
Exactly. And why would a Willie Anderson play in that game other than, some of these guys you do not want to get hurt. So
Anderson shouldn't. Bryce Young, in my opinion, and we still have, last I looked on DK Sportsbook, both Stroud and Bryce Young are plus 175 to be the number one pick. I haven't gotten around to the draft stuff yet. I'm a huge draft better, but and we missed. You and I both agreed on Jabari Smith in NBA, and the other way. So like, it's better to bet on information than how you feel about a certain prospect. I have a hard time seeing how Bryce Young isn't the best prospect in this draft. I like him as the first pick, and I don't see why he would play in this bowl game, which should change a lot.
Well, I mean, we are probably most likely dealing with the Houston Texans here. So they sometimes zig when everyone's zagging. So I don't know there. So
that's true. They could
One
certainly use a quarterback.
Yes, definitely. And I don't know, some of these other teams, the Lions and the Eagles are sitting with, multiple first round picks.
Yep.
They could do some maneuvering. I'm hearing from my Lions guys, Willie Anderson, if he makes it to him. I don't think Goff's the problem. So I don't think they have to waste their first pick on whoever slides down to him.
It really depends on what you want to do. Like, Goff's not the problem. The offense can score. But Bryce Young, in my opinion, would certainly be an upgrade. So what is the other pick? Like, is it worth, a Will Anderson would be great for a team like the Lions, right? They need defense, I guess they just used Hutchinson too. So if they really want to load up on that D line, but you gotta weigh what you want to do. Sometimes taking the upgrade at the position is so drastic that it can outweigh even just adding a star at another position. I have no idea how the Texans or Lions feel about that. So that's why we wait for the information to bet any draft stuff. I'll say that.
Last thing on college, and it was kind of, you could hear the narrative, you could hear people talking, and listen, the kid just left his heart on the field, Max Duggan of TCU on Saturday. Then the rumblings, did he do enough? Listen, I know USC lost to Utah. The Heisman, is it a wrap?
Oh, he's not winning the Heisman. I don't think the numbers were there to begin with. The case was just not that he had a bad year at all, but like the elite Heisman type of numbers, I didn't think it was there to begin with. But if he was going to win it, it would need to be, because of the undefeated team thing, and there wasn't anybody else quite as deserving. Caleb Williams gets hurt. I still think you can get it with 2 losses. I still think Williams is going to win it. Just because of the ridiculous numbers he put up, and was even doing so at the start of the Utah game until he obviously got hurt. So I don't know if there's anything to necessarily hold against him. I would probably still say it's Caleb Williams. And the last I looked, it's off the board right now. Last I looked, Caleb Williams was still minus 1,600 on DraftKings.
Okay. I'm going to get to the bad news first, and I'm saying bad news. Let's go with the Patriots here. In August, I made a statement that I think I probably got 5,000 comments on, that the Patriots have finished last in the East with the Bills up top, Miami second, Jets third, and DK Sports had that at plus 1,400. I really was pulling for Mike White to steal that one last Sunday. That would have kind of got me closer. Listen, Julian, we were born at night, not last night. I'm telling you, there's 2 different playbooks, one for Mac Jones, one for Zappe. What the hell is going on? Do they have a vendetta, or is this Matt Patricia versus Mac? What the hell is going on with the offense? When Mac blew up, he deserved to blow up. He really did.
Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't look good. The players clearly aren't happy with the way things are being called, and I think Mac Jones is at fault, but not at the most fault. I think the coaching is the problem, and that Mac Jones has enough guys to make plays for him, and that he's just not being put in position to do so. Now, if there is a position to do so, they've just lost consecutive Thursday games. They had all this time off for a Monday night game in Arizona against Cliff Kingsbury. If you're going to, the Patriots have always outsmarted everybody. If they're now going to kind of take that step back, if there's still a team you can outsmart, I feel like it's the Arizona Cardinals. We saw Mac Jones put up points indoors against a poor Minnesota defense. Now you're going to be indoors against a poor Arizona defense. I think this is going to be a get-right spot for the Patriots offense. Actually, the only thing that I've bet, what's next week? Is next week 13? Can't
14.
even remember. 14?
14.
All right. See, I'm losing my mind. The only thing that I've bet for NFL Week 14, I took the Patriots minus 120 money line on Monday Night Football in Arizona. I think the defense will show up. The defense has shown up, so I think it'll continue to show up. And I think that this will look more like the offense we saw in Minnesota for this team, which will be enough against Arizona. It wasn't against Minnesota.
They're 6-6, so they go from there to the Raiders and Josh McDaniel, who was dead and buried. Now they've shown a little life the last couple of weeks. The locals talking about, listen, this season technically isn't over. You got a chance to. They're staying out west. They're going to go play in Arizona, and then they're going to shoot over to Vegas, potentially to come back home 8-6. Julian, is there still hope? Or are you just seeing there not enough games left in the season?
There's hope because nobody else is separating themselves. Like, what's your competition? The Jets. I don't think that there's that enough good teams to say that there's no hope. Now it would be the same result as last year. You would just go in and get smoked by a team like Buffalo in that first game. So Patriots are what they are at this point. We'll see if they make it. Going 2-0 in that West Coast trip would be huge for them. I think they beat Arizona, so I think that's a good start. The question is then on the short week, back-to-back road games at Vegas, a game that'll mean a lot to Josh McDaniels, as we know from his past matchups against Belichick. Is Vegas just going to be so up for that game with a little bit of momentum that it's just a better spot for them? I don't know. Splitting on that road trip would make sense to me. That's kind of been the team the Patriots have been for the last couple years. So no, they're not dead because of what the rest of the competition is, but they're certainly not going anywhere if they get in.
Obviously, you work at DraftKings. I'm always picking your brain. I love following your timeline on Twitter. You're always shopping around. Hey, listen, we've said this forever. I'll say it again. Listen, anyone watching and listening, you don't see something at DraftKings, reach out to Julian at Julian Edlow and tell him, hey, I'm looking at this market. What can you do? He'll reach out. He doesn't guarantee it, but he'll do the work for you. With that said, NFC looked like obviously it was the Eagles, but the sexy pick was the Niners. Their defense was getting healthier. They add McCaffrey. Then Jimmy G goes down. And the Dallas Cowboys just making statements after statements. They have the defense. They have Parsons. They have a running attack. They got CeeDee Lamb. They got Dak. Tom last night, dead, done, all set. The season's over. Miraculously, back-to-back scores. Thanks for playing. A little pulse. They're going to win that division. Any leans, anything you're starting to like try to peek through in the NFC right now, or even the AFC, where you're seeing some value anywhere on maybe a playoff, an AFC, NFC champ, or even a late run on a Super Bowl champ?
I don't know if I'm going to try and guess. Like, NFL has been so unpredictable week by week. I don't know how I'm going to you can find value, I guess. You can find teams where the number maybe doesn't make quite as much sense, but picking sides in the NFL right now is so hard. And you see, I was very close to betting the Niners to win the NFC over the weekend. I was talking about it with a friend, just like you mentioned, who is going to come out of the NFC? The Eagles have all these wins. The Vikings have all these wins, but they look like they might be decent fades in the playoffs, particularly the Vikings, who have now ticked to 2-point underdogs in Detroit on DK Sportsbook. 2.5. What is happening? Look at my alerts, Twitter alerts here.
Barry Sanders is coming back to play.
Maybe. I just watched this go from 1.5 to 2 to 2.5 on DK Sportsbook. Lions, who opened slight dogs, now 2.5-point favorites over the Vikings. I was going to bet San Francisco. I have San Francisco to win the division. I don't know if I can bet them to win the NFC now. I don't hate them with the rookie quarterback, with Purdy. I still think they're going to be okay, and they're going to win the division. But that took away my answer. I need to see a little bit more there before I bet on the Niners, who host the Bucs this week. it's hard. Like there's no value on the Eagles because of how many wins that they've racked up. There's definitely no value on the Vikings. I just want to go against the Vikings. And I should have taken Detroit in a pick 'em. I can't believe how much that's growing on us. That could be an over game in Detroit. 53, big number, but those two defenses and those two offenses, I might just take the over on the 53. But the NFC is probably more confusing than the AFC, where we at least know like the Chiefs are good, the Bills are good, the Bengals are good. Like there's good teams that can break through and win the conference. Wouldn't surprise you at all. The NFC seems more up in the air, especially with like these teams like the Bucks, as you said, are going to limp into a division finish. The Niners or Seahawks are going to win that NFC West. Like that's not a team that you think of as being like all that dangerous. So the NFC is really interesting. I don't have a play right now. I would have given you the Niners if Jimmy G didn't get hurt. Now I have to see a little bit more, but we'll see what happens throughout the course of the season. Maybe something opens up for us. But the Niners were about to be that team for me and just got taken away.
And you talked about the AFC. It's clearly a three-horse race. We talked in August about the Bills circling the wagon. I think that I was thinking they'd be the number one seed. You would have to finally go through Buffalo in January, which wasn't going to be an easy task. Mm-hmm. And two, the number one seeds get that week off, which is so huge in the playoffs. Yep. And then we'll try to defend their home turf. Kansas City, Mahomes, a week, 10 days ago, they were the team. Mahomes was the MVP. And Cool Joe, I'm telling you, they're running attack the last 3-4 weeks, mixing, no mixing. Burrow, if you didn't like him last year, I'm telling you, that kid is legit.
Yeah, for sure. The Bengals are not suffering from the Super Bowl hangover as that losing team. It's the Rams who won it, who are obviously having the down year, and the Bengals are going to be right back in the mix. So I didn't think they would necessarily be this good again, although it makes sense. Usually those Super Bowl teams aren't quite as young as the Bengals, so they're young. They helped Burrow on the O-line a little bit, and they're playing really well. So, yeah, I think like in the AFC, if you told me it wasn't the Bills or Chiefs or Bengals, I would be kind of surprised, even if it was a team like Miami, who's really good. Whereas in the NFC, nothing would surprise me. Like if Miami was in the NFC, and I'm keeping them out of the elite in the AFC, if Miami was in the NFC, I'd probably say that's the team. Go bet on Miami in the NFC. So, yeah, it's pretty heavy right now over in the AFC, which as I'm saying that makes me think like, we always have those lines up like Super Bowl look ahead spread or Super Bowl winner, just AFC versus NFC. There might be a little, where's the number? There might be a little value maybe on taking the AFC because those generally don't get too out of hand in terms of the spread or the money line. But if you kind of think like, all right, what are the Super Bowl matchups going to be? You're probably going to see a pretty decent favorite on the AFC side, right?
I thought I saw AFC -3.
That seems like a smaller number than the Super Bowl will be, if you ask me right now, right? Let's see. I'll see if I can pop it up on DraftKings, but that's going to be a big number in the Super Bowl by Super Bowl standards, I would say. I mean, you can bet Super Bowl exact results. I don't see a spread on the Super Bowl right now.
Maybe it was Superbook might have had it out last weekend. It was AFC -3.
We'll have it. It's always in the mix. Yeah, I can't find it right now, but I'll post that if I find the Super Bowl line on DraftKings. That just I hadn't thought of that until we had this conversation, but the AFC makes sense.
Couple seconds left. I know you have another show to go to. Talk about the Celtics. Tough. Was it OT loss on Friday against the Heat? Yep. Jimmy Butler came back and listen. That Miami Heat, even though they're struggling this year, that's the one thorn it seems in the Celtics side. Butler don't care. They got a team that just comes in. I love their head coach. You got Pat Riley high above courtside. But where I take from that is I think they played Sunday, they win, and then back to back. They go to the Raptors 1.5 point dogs, and they take care of business there. If I saw the schedule correctly, head out west now to Phoenix coming up. Any chinks in this armor? Any value anywhere on this team, or is it just I was watching Brogdon the other day, and I'm telling you, if they had Brogdon last year, I think they would have beaten Golden State. True professional, just the gritty guy that they needed, I thought, and I just think he takes that team just to another level.
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts on the Celtics are that they're a bet-on team. It's pretty simple. Last night was the first night of the first game of the year that they were underdogs. They win and come through. I was iffy on them at first. I did wind up putting them out as a bet, mostly because I think that there was a lot of, why were they underdogs? Toronto's a tough place to play. The Raptors were 9-2 at home going into that game. But I think there's a lot of stock put on these second night of a back-to-back in the NBA. And they did sit Horford and Brogdon, but they got Smart back to essentially offset Brogdon. And they have guys to replace Horford. So the way that number was set was a little too extreme for the back-to-back. You look at the Celtics numbers, prior to that game, and the numbers are just as good now, but prior to that game, I know they were 4-0 on the second night of a back-to-back, average margin of victory over 16 points, and they were 3-1 against the spread, covering by over 8 points per game. So they're just much better in that spot than other teams. So I wound up betting on them for that reason, and it came through. So we'll see what they look like. Phoenix, maybe a little bit of a look-ahead spot. They got Phoenix on Wednesday. Jason Tatum, who I thought was great in his post-game interview after the Raptors game, really, like he was excited for his teammates, step-by-step type of approach. I really liked what he had to say in terms of the Celtics' futures outlook. But he did say, we got an off day in Phoenix. I'm looking forward to golfing. We got the Warriors on the Saturday night game. So and that's another 2 off days. You get Thursday and Friday off and then play Saturday in Golden State. So maybe Phoenix is a little bit of a look ahead spot. I'm not going to bet on the Suns. I'm not going to bet against the Celtics. But we'll see what that looks like. If the Suns beat the Celtics, I'll probably bet the Celtics against the Warriors on Saturday night regardless. Just a good revenge spot. The Celtics are a much better team right now than the Warriors, and they have last year on their minds. I think they're going to win that game on the road. But if they lose to Phoenix, then it probably becomes a larger play for me just because they're kind of coming off that loss. And we know the trend on the Celtics last year coming off of losses and how good they were. The other thing is once they return home, that first half team total over at home just keeps going. They got it on the first road game. They didn't get it in Toronto last night. I can't bet it as much on the road, but at home, historic offense. They put up 70 on Dallas, who at the time was the number one first half defense in the NBA, giving up 52 a game. They had a 78 in there. They had a 72 in there. First half team totals at home, regardless of who's in or out. They cashed one without Tatum. They cashed one without Brown. I'll be back on those when the road trip is over.
And it was funny because I'm following your timeline, and it's just a cash cow. It's a cash cow. It's a cash cow. And it's just as the Ohio State team total is, it's nice having those auto bets. You just wake up, you put them in, and you just forget about them. And good eyes on you. Have you made any games yet this year? I know you have tickets.
Haven't made any games. Tough to do with the new baby around, but maybe one this month, maybe one next month. I don't know. I got to get to some at some point. I'm saving my ammo though. We know this team is going to be a beast in April, May, June. I'm saving my outs to make it to the ones that count.
The one and only Julian Edlow at Julian Edlow at DraftKings at DK Sports at DK Live at Unreasonable Odds Podcast. Go follow him. Always a pleasure, Jules, catching up on Tuesday. Have a great week, and we'll catch up to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Jeff. We'll talk next week.
Take care, Julian. Julian Edlow on DraftKings. Go follow him. I've had the pleasure a few times hanging out with him in Vegas, and the nicest guy in the world. What you see, what you hear is what you get, and it works for DraftKings. Busts his ass there, and he's for the people. So again, if you see anything out there that you're kind of interested in, maybe a weird sport, a weird angle, whatever, a prop, a future, just reach out to him, ask him, DM him, put it on his timeline. He'll go up to the hierarchies and he'll ask away. So again, shout out to Julian. Thank you so much. So something's working, not working on StreamYard here with the backdrops. Apologize for the green screen. In 32 minutes, so you get time to go get a coffee, a bagel, whatever you want to do. Dave Sharapan, that's right, at Sportsbook Consig, at Cash Consideration Show, the mayor of Vegas, the real Vegas Dave, will be joining the ECSI studios. So please, please go get a coffee, go do something, and come back at 31 minutes. We'll see you soon.